I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing.
What's up, everybody? It's Common Sense Investor coming at you with another video. This video, we're going to talk about the AMC, the GME, the COSM, and every other squeeze that's out there. All right. In one of my last videos, I made a comment. I'm sorry I did it. But I made the comment that if everybody would just pay attention and follow the dots instead of following a YouTuber, y'all figure the end game of this shit out, because they've told us. And people got crazy. They're like, CSI, just tell us what the end game is. And I just shake my head and I go, I've told y'all. So, I'm going to tell you again. I'm going to show you a clip. And this is how we're going to do this. We're going to see what the end game is. And then we walk backwards from there. Okay? So listen to this clip real quick by Patrick Byrne, the CEO or former CEO of Overstock, when he was battling the hedges and the things that he's went through and what he found out when he was doing it. So it's very, very important. He tells you the end game. Listen.
A normal stock trade is you're buying stock from me, you give me money, and I'll give you stock. That's called settlement. Believe it or not, there's a loophole that exists in the system. And when the time comes for me to give you the stock that you bought from me, I can give you just an IOU, basically, for some stock. Now, you or I couldn't do this, but big hedge funds and prime brokers have ways of doing this. And all they're really giving is an IOU. And you never know that. You get your brokerage statement from Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley, and it says you got the stock. Well, no stock ever came. All you got was an IOU. But what happened, and what seems to have happened, is some hedge funds have figured out how to manipulate this loophole and inject hundreds of millions or even billions of these, what are in fact fake shares, into the market. Well, here's people on the record in the back offices of Wall Street, the transfer agents who actually count votes, that say, with quotes like, "This is positively criminal. We regularly do not have any idea who's entitled to vote and who isn't. We regularly get 2 to 3 times as many votes as there are shares." Now, as crazy as all that sounds, the New York Stock Exchange did a study on 341 elections, found overvoting in all 341. If it just really happened by random human error, you'd see these fake shares, these phantom shares scattered around the market. Like peanut butter spread over a sandwich. They'd be spread evenly. Well, the SEC hired an economist named Leslie Bonney to study this. And she did this statistical analysis and saw where they're concentrated. And she says, no way this is happening by random human error. It's massive, it's endemic in the system, and it's clearly being used to manipulate. It's clearly being targeted. It's easy to create a lot of misdirection and smoke and mirrors about. You couldn't do what I'm about to describe. You couldn't do to IBM or Microsoft. And you just flood the market with fake shares in their companies, and you can crack the market. And if you can do this while you have a couple of your shill journalists just write stories after stories banging the company, you can basically drop it to nothing. So is that going on? Well, 3 years ago, the SEC was saying this is a myth, this isn't a myth. They finally faced enough public pressure that they passed a very tepid Regulation Show, and it said that they were going to start disclosing the names of companies that are seeing excessive numbers of these phantom shares in their stock. And they actually said on their website, the SEC website actually said, we have to grandfather, that is, we have to forgive all the phantom shares that are already in the system because we're afraid of the volatility that might result from large pre-existing open positions. Now that's bizarre, because a month or a year earlier they'd been saying this isn't going on, it's a myth, it's all wacky. And then they came out and said, well, okay, we're going to try to do something about it, but we have to forgive all that's in the system, because if we don't, it's going to crack the system.
All right, again, that was Patrick Byrne, the former CEO of Overstock, who fought the shorts and won. Paid a heavy price, too, because they went after him. But here's the thing. He tells you exactly what the end game is here, people. And I'm going to read the quote back to you. He says, Gary Gensler, the SEC, said, we have to grandfather, that is, we have to forgive all these phantom shares. Period. That's the end game. To forgive the phantom shares, to get rid of them, to grandfather them in, whatever the fuck you want to call it. You got to get rid of them. That's their stance. Now, our stance over on our side of the fence is the shorts have to cover. We'll do the crisp, and then this will happen, and then when the moon aligns with Mars, we're going to squeeze. No. End game. We have to forgive these. You have to look at this play from their perspective, not from yours. Your part's already done. You've bought, you've held, and now it's time to figure out how they pull off this end game of forgiving these phantom shares that are in the market. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably screaming at your computer screen, bullshit, fuck that. There's a price that's got to be paid. These motherfuckers have stole trillions of dollars from us over the years. And it's time that it stops. And Gary Gensler's response is, we have to forgive them, or else the volatility will crack the market. Yes, it will implode because they've done this so much. So, if you're wondering where Gary Gensler's at and what he's doing, he's trying to figure out how they can forgive these phantom shares before everybody has to push that sell button and they have to pay us, and when they do, it's going to collapse or vanquish, as one YouTuber used to say, the entire market. So we have to forgive them. That's the end game. Their end game. Now, our part now is to try to stop that. Then we have to figure out how they plan on pulling off this end game, which is forgive the phantom shares. And how do you forgive phantom shares? Reverse stock splits. A reverse stock split. One company just did 100-for-1 reverse stock split. They got rid of 99-for-1 phantom shares. Were forgiven. Just like that. So then your next question is probably going to be, well, what part is Adam Aaron playing in all this? And we're going to have to talk about that later. But right now, you need to know. You need to have a focus that says, okay, I now understand. Their end game is to erase all of these phantom shares. That's their end goal. Once you have that understanding, you can start understanding how they're implementing it. You'd understand why I say the things that I say. In fact, let me give you a couple of examples of what I've said over the past 12 days, and now you'll understand why I've said these things, why I believe this is what's going to happen, because the end game is to what? Erase the phantom shares. And I had a question. I started looking at this and I'm going, wait a minute. There's a whole lot of reverse stock splits going on. This company that I have my eye on just did a 25-to-1 reverse stock split. This one just did a 50-to-1 reverse stock split that I'm looking at. And I got to thinking, if he's going to erase some phantom shares, then they're going to be next in line. If they're next in line, it's going 25, 50, it should be 100. So then I went to reading the documents, and I found that AMC, a 1-for-100 ape share split. All right, and I thought perhaps it was the 1/100th of an ape equals 1 share of AMC. So, with that understanding, a reverse stock split of ape 1/100 would have gave you 1 share of AMC. So, I know they're using reverse stock splits. I figured AMC to be the next one in the line, and they weren't. So I said, well, I've had enough. I contacted AMC to find out, hey, what is this 1/100 bullshit? All right. Because none of these YouTubers who claim to be financial geniuses will attempt to explain, because they don't fucking know either. All right? And the second, I mean, not second, but the 2 hours after I sent this email, they dropped the news of a conversion and a reverse stock split. And I said, motherfucker, I told y'all that in my last video. That's what they were about to do. They're using reverse stock splits to erase the shit. Then I said, ape conversion, yes or no? All right, the conversion. People were jumping on the reverse stock split. They weren't looking at the conversion. I said, don't move ahead. Conversion first. All right. Then he breaks his silence on how he feels about the ape share conversion. I told you what the Antara deal was all about. All right. Then I explained what the 10-to-1 reverse stock split will be like with AMC. Since I've been claimed for being doing nothing but preaching hopium, and that I'm wrong for things. If you're working it backwards, you can understand it. All right. Then you start figuring out that we all have placeholders according to what Patrick Burns said. All right. The stock split strategy that they're going to be using, I explained, and so forth and so on. Now, from time to time, yes, I was a little off, like the 100 for 1. That's a good reasoning, though, that AMC would try to wipe out as many synthetic phantom shares that are out there. 100 to 1 would be a good way to go, but they only settled for 10. So that's cool. But stop thinking I'm fucking crazy, people. All you have to do is stop and start putting in your head what Gary Gensler has said. The purpose of all of this is to erase the phantom shares away from the market before it crashes the system. How are they going to do it? Reverse stock split. What part of this is Adam Aaron playing? Oh. I'm wishy-washy, people say. No, I'm investigating. All right. And I've come to my conclusion on what role Adam Aaron is playing in this. And I'll tell you about it in my next video. Love y'all. Be blessed. See you in the next video.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what